Hey creeps, my name is Cameron and welcome to my channel where I talk about books, movies, writing, and all things spooky. I hope everybody's 2018 was amazing, a lot better than what you see in the news. My year was actually not too bad, so yay. On this episode of Library Macabre, I'm going to look back on all of the books that I read in 2018 and pick out my top 10. Hey, welcome back. So like I said, my 2018, not too bad. I read more books this year than I have any other year in my life. I launched Library Macabre as a regular segment on this channel, and that has proved to be a success, so that's cool too. As a book reviewer, I have had many great offers come my way in terms of the books that I've been reviewing, the books I'm being offered for review. I was chosen as a representative for A Stranger Dream. I was chosen as a representative for the Nightworms package, so I'll be a rep for them this year. Overall, it was just a really busy year, and I read a ton of great books, and it was very hard to choose a top 10, but I think I have it narrowed down. These books aren't going to be listed in any particular order. I'm just going to kind of go through the stack. Most of these are horror, because I just really embraced the horror genre this year and read a ton of great horror books. But there are a couple in here that aren't horror, that are from other genres. The very first book I will talk about is Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. Not a horror novel, this is a thriller. A lot of you might have heard of Big Little Lies through the HBO TV series, which stars Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman. I haven't watched the show yet, though I do still want to get to it, but I did read the book this year, and I loved every minute of it. From the humor, to the suspense, to the everyday lives of these rich, whiny moms, it was just so much fun. It's just so crammed full of twists, some of which are way over the top, but it just contributes to that soap opera feel and just really keeps you entertained. So that is Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. Definitely recommend it. Another one of my top 10 favorite books that I read this year was A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. And I read all three of Paul Tremblay's books this year, and A Head Full of Ghosts is by far my favorite. I liked Disappearance at Devil's Rock. I actually was not a big fan of Cabin at the End of the World. I know a lot of people are calling that their favorite Paul Tremblay book. For me, it just didn't work. Kind of irritated me. But Head Full of Ghosts, I think, is awesome, and I'm really looking forward to the new movie adaptation that is coming out very soon. But if you don't know, the story follows a teenage girl who claims to be possessed, and her parents then have a TV crew come in to film their daughter's exorcism, which sounds really crazy. But in the book, you just get so sucked up into it that you don't really question it so much. But you do question whether or not the girl is actually possessed or if she isn't. You never really know exactly what happens at the end of the book. You just kind of have to decide for yourself. So it's a little bit ambiguous, but it's not so ambiguous that it got on my nerves. Ambiguity is something that often rubs me the wrong way because I often take it as a sign of laziness trying to disguise itself as art. But A Head Full of Ghosts, I believe, is just ambiguous enough. It leaves enough for your imagination to just run wild. So that alone makes it one of my favorite books of 2018. Also, it was just really well written, and I really admire Paul Tremblay's work in this book. Okay, the final audiobook that I'm going to talk about is something that I've not talked about on this channel. I have written a full review of this book on Goodreads, but talking about it is a little difficult. So the book that I am talking about right now is The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. This is a book from the 80s. I had never read any of Jack Ketchum's work. When he passed away earlier this year, I decided I kind of owed it to myself to check out some of Jack Ketchum's work because he is very well regarded in the horror community, and I decided I would start with his most renowned book, which is The Girl Next Door. I listened to the audiobook on Hoopla. It is narrated by Jack Ketchum, which made it even more emotional. But man, oh man, this book is really rough, and I am not going to sit here and say that I recommend it to everybody to read, because on one hand, I don't think anybody should read this book. On the next, I feel like everybody should read this book. So I'm a little conflicted here. But the story follows a young boy who lives next door to this woman and her children. He is best friends with all of her kids, and he really likes this woman, even though she and her kids are a bit trashy. But one summer, a teenage girl and her little sister come to live with this woman and her children. And apparently, these two girls are the nieces of this woman, and she has taken them in after their parents died. The main character, the boy who lives next door, immediately becomes infatuated with this girl who has just moved into her aunt's house. But it isn't long before he starts to notice certain things that are going on inside this house. Like, for instance, he noticed this girl getting beaten by her aunt. And guys, this book gets really, really rough. And it gets real, and it's gritty, and it's dark, and it totally left me just emotionally exhausted. The most difficult book I have ever read in my life is one of the best books that I read of 2018. It is a very eye-opening experience reading that book, and I could tell that Jack Ketchum really had a lot he wanted to say, and man, does he say it. He just drives it home, and it is based on true events, so he stayed true to those events, and he did not shy away from anything. So obviously, it's a book that makes a really strong impact, and I've never read anything like it. Probably never will. Going a little lighter, I have Hark, the Herald Angels Scream, which is a Christmas horror anthology edited by Christopher Golden. I recently received this from the Nightworms package, and I read this over Christmas and loved every minute of it. Well, I shouldn't say every minute. I think there were 3 stories in this book that I was not crazy about, but every other story was perfect. Every other story. And that does not happen often with anthologies. Usually anthologies are half and half. This was, I would say, like 95% of the book was perfect. It's just a lot of fun, and for the like $10 it costs on Amazon, I highly recommend ordering a copy. I'm cheating a little bit with this one because these are actually 2 books that I read from the same author, and I couldn't really choose between them. So I'm just going to kind of include them together in this spot, and that is Kill River 2 and Disco Deathtrap, both by Cameron Rubik. Now, I do have full video reviews of these books up on my channel, so I will link those down below in the graveyard. But just to give you my quick thoughts, these are both 80s throwback slashers, and they are just pure craziness. They're classic slashers. Obviously, you should read Kill River 1 before you read Kill River 2. But Disco Deathtrap, you can start with this one if you want. It takes place on New Year's Eve at a roller skating rink. They're having this big New Year's party, and there's a killer loose in the skating rink, and it's just crazy. So really, you can't go wrong with anything by Cameron Rubik. He's one of my favorite authors right now. The next book, I actually listened to the audiobook of, but I do have a physical copy to show you, and that is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I have seen the movies, Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2, multiple times. I love the movies, but I never read the book, and I finally did that this year. I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Michael C. Hall. He does an amazing job, by the way. This book was amazing. By far my favorite Stephen King book that I've ever read. Really, the movie stays very, very faithful to the book. A lot of people say that the movie is garbage and totally steers away from the book, but that's not the case at all. The movie is very, very faithful, actually. But the book is better in that it does get you deeper into the story and into the characters. Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Read it. Check out the audiobook, narrated by Michael C. Hall. It's great. Also, the new movie is coming out very soon, and it looks very good. Other than I don't like that they got rid of Judd's accent. That really sucks. But anyway, Pet Sematary. Next up, Bonesaw by Patrick Lacey. Loved this book. I do have a full video review on my channel, so again, I will link that below. But basically, this was just pure fun, classic, gory horror at its finest. It just really wears its love of 80s horror films on its sleeve, as you could tell by the cover even. Just a great book. So definitely go check out my review and go read this thing. Scream All Night, Derek Millman. If I had to choose my #1 favorite book of 2018, this is it. Again, I reviewed this already. I gushed about it in my review. One of my favorite books of all time now. Seriously, not just of this year, of all time. Just read it. Just do it. Go. Here's The Whiz Mob and the Grenadine Kid. This is a middle grade novel that takes place in 1960s Italy. It follows a young boy who is on vacation with his father, and he runs into a mob of child pickpockets, and he slowly starts to get involved with them. And this book was just so freaking cozy. I loved this thing. And the final book on my top 10 books of 2018 list is Corpse Cold, New American Folklore by John Bruell and Joe Sullivan. It is a throwback to the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books that I read as a kid. Those books are amazing. This is, as you can tell by the cover, totally in style of those books. The illustrations are done by Chad Worley. They look exactly like the illustrations you would see in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And the stories in Corpse Cold are very much in vein of those stories that I read as a kid, but they're aged up a little bit for adults. I don't recommend giving this one to kids just because the stories are a little bit more mature. So if you are an adult reader who used to read Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, you will love this one. Trust me. So there we have it. Those are my top 10 books of 2018. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you all had a great reading year as well. And I will see you in the next video. Later, creeps.